countdown to Kansas City with just 11 weeks left before the NWSL Championship final that is set for November 23rd. It is on CBS, 8 p.m. Eastern from CPKC Stadium in Kansas City. We thought that it would be fun to take a little trip down memory lane and recap all of the past NWSL champions along the way leading up to this year's final. So with 11 weeks left, there have been 10 previous champions in the NWSL, the first ever coming in 2013 in the inaugural NWSL season. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, Lisa, that math is wrong, but it is only 10 championships and only 10 champions because, lest we not forget, 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, the championship in the regular season was replaced by the Challenge Cup and the fall series. Houston won the Challenge Cup. Portland Thorns won the fall series. So we're not talking about that year. We're talking full NWSL championships. Now we're starting in 2013. We're rewinding it. And we are starting with the inaugural NWSL championship. The champion, who they beat, how they got there, everything that goes into it. And Sandra, when we got this rundown, how much of the 2013 championship did you remember or know from stories versus how much did you have to look up, rewatch, and go back through to find?
I'm not going to front. I'm so thrilled for this segment and how we're going to roll it out over the course of the next 10 weeks. Shout out to our producer, Mark. I love this. I thought this is his brainchild. Great one to sort of have some fun with and kind of like enlighten some folks along the way. And I was really excited because it's like I knew we were going to start with that 2013 championship. And I got to be real, like I'm not too far removed from kind of rewatching it. Shout out to the wonderful internet because you can maybe go on a certain website and look up old clips of things. And one of those things happens to be this final. And so during the height of the pandemic, like a lot of people found themselves with maybe some extra time on their hands, I went back and watched a lot of old NWSL games. They were not pretty, I'll be frank. A lot of times they were on YouTube. Not so much the case with the championship final in particular. If I remember correctly, I think it might have been like a cable event. But it was cool to sort of see some of revisit really some players who maybe are no longer playing in the league and kind of, remember how things got started in NWSL.
Yeah, it's crazy to think back to that time and kind of what the season looked like, what the league looked like, the teams that no longer exist, the uniforms. I was watching this highlight. I watched it yesterday and then I rewatched it this morning before our show. And it's just so funny that it's how many players are no longer in the league, no longer really around football anymore, and how many still play in the NWSL. It is pretty badass. Let's take a look back at the 2013 NWSL final regular season and how the regular season ended. It was the Western New York Flash that finished at the top of the table. They won the Shield that inaugural year, but they won it, Sandra, on goal differential because at 38 points, it was the Flash, FC Kansas City, and Portland Thorns, but the Flash took the Shield on goal differential. And the fourth team to make the playoffs, it was only top four back then, was Sky Blue FC sitting on 36 points. So first round of playoffs, the Flash beat Sky Blue 2-0, and Portland beat FC Kansas City in extra time 3-2. So the 2013 final was set for August 31st, 2013 at Sheehan Stadium in Rochester, New York. It was the Western New York Flash as the home team against the Portland Thorns as the visitors. Let's run through these starting 11s. You want to take us through Western New York Flash and their 4-4-2 lineup with manager Aaron Lines?
All right, let's get ready for some of these names. Definitely let us know if you remember some of these legends, because some of them are actually still playing in the league. So to roll out, the Flash had Adriana French in goal, Brittany Taylor, Estelle Johnson, Amy Barczyk, Sarah Huffman, Angela Salem, Carly Lloyd, Catherine Reynolds, Adriana Martin, Abby Wambach, Sam Kerr. Just a couple names, just sprinkled throughout this Flash lineup.
Just a couple legendary names. I mean, still playing in the league. AD French, Estelle Johnson still playing. She's not in the league right now, but still playing. Angela Salem is coaching in the league right now. Pretty crazy to
Yeah.
think about all these different players. McCall Zerboni was subbed into this match. So was
Yes.
Vicky DiMartino and Jodianne Robinson that came in. But Abby Wambach was the captain of this side with Carly Lloyd. And throughout the regular season, the Western New York Flash had the best defense in the NWSL. Through 22 regular season games, they only allowed 20 goals. And a lot of that had to do with Estelle Johnson and Brittany Taylor as the center back duo in front of AD French. They had a really good thing going defensively. And this Flash side went on really good streaks throughout this season. On the other side, Portland Thorns, I'll run you through this lineup. They had Karina LeBlanc in goal, absolute legend. Like this is so crazy to think
Yeah.
about. Marion Doherty, Catherine Williamson, Rachel Bueller, and Nikki Marshall across the back line. Angie Kerr, Ali Long, and Mana Shim. Tobin Heath, Danielle Foxhoven, and Christine Sinclair as the captain and the 9 for this final team. The manager, Sandra, get this, Cindy Parlow-Cone,
Yep.
who is now with U.S. Soccer, former player. But one of the biggest things about this championship match when the Portland Thorns dropped their lineup is that Tobin Heath would be starting and Alex Morgan was available off the bench. Now, Alex Morgan hadn't played a game since August 7th this season. And remember, it's August 31st for the championship because Morgan suffered a sprained MCL in her knee. So the fact that Alex Morgan was on the bench and available to come in as a sub was really huge for Portland and made fans very excited for this match. Sandra, when you think about the Thorns starting lineup, some of the players that did come in, Courtney Wetzel, Tina Ellerson, and Alex Morgan, which names stand out to you from this Thorns roster?
I think honestly, I think for the Thorns roster, for the players who didn't come in, I'm looking at maybe Tiffany Weimer. I think that's a name that folks may not remember or might not be super familiar with. This, I think, of players, who alongside all of these high profile players, whether they were an Alex Morgan or Tobin Heath or Christine Sinclair, who helped kind of sustain the league. We've done a lot of celebrating of Alex Morgan recently and about the fact that she has utilized her platform throughout her time during club play to make sure that she was a good teammate, good person, trying to be supportive in that aspect. And yes, there is no NWSL without the buy-in from really marquee players. But there's also no NWSL without players who also take a leap of faith and try to navigate a pro career. And I think about players like that. So it's wild to think about maybe even some of these names on this list, Lisa, for the starting lineup specifically, who kind of became like really iconic Thorns players, but
Right.
eventually left along the way. Like Karina LeBlanc plays for this Thorns team, but ends up getting traded to Chicago like shortly after that. And Ali Long plays a long time with Thorn as well, but ends up going to Seattle for a little bit, like a rival team, and then ends up playing for, Gotham and the East Coast. Like it's just wild to think about some of the trajectory of these careers.
And Karina LeBlanc makes her way back to Portland in her professional
Yeah.
managerial careers, right? She's now the current sitting Portland Thorns GM. So, okay, throughout this game, go watch these highlights on YouTube, by the way. NWSL has them there. But I whipped out my NWSL Almanac by the keeper. Shout out Jen Cooper, who does all the stats. She is an encyclopedia of NWSL facts. And I am lucky enough to have a couple editions of her NWSL Almanac that has all the history of the NWSL. So I was flipping through that to find some good nuggets and things like that. So thank you, Jen. But throughout this game, in the opening 25 minutes, Western New York Flash dominated. They looked so good, right? With Kerr, with Lloyd, they were creating chances. They had good opportunities. It really interesting opportunities that Karina LeBlanc had to make some huge saves. However, in the 40th minute, Portland Thorns get a set piece that is about 25 yards out. Tobin Heath lines up over it. It's an absolute bullet. It basically rips the back of the net wide open, and Portland take the lead 1-0. In the second half, things got really interesting for Portland because Abby Wambach was causing a lot of trouble for Portland's defense. And Kat Williamson ends up getting a yellow card against Abby Wambach for tugging her down, and Wambach doesn't take it. She makes this like dirty look at the camera. Then about 5 minutes later, Williamson gets another yellow, her second yellow in about 5 minutes, both against Abby Wambach. So in the 56th minute, Portland is now down to 10 players. And again, Western New York Flash just dominate the next 25, 30 minutes of the match. Alex Morgan gets subbed on for Portland Thorns, and the chances are far and few between for Portland. Western New York Flash is just absolutely knocking on the door, and it's Karina LeBlanc, who's doing a lot defensively, along with the center backs, because Portland has to shift their formation. They're playing down a player. And in stoppage time, Alex Morgan gets the ball. She feeds Christine Sinclair through, and Portland go up 2-0 in the 92nd minute to win the inaugural NWSL championship. They go on a 4-game unbeaten streak through the playoffs, and they win the first major title for a major professional sports team in Portland since 1977. Tobin Heath is the midfielder, and she is named the MVP in this championship match, of course, scoring the go-ahead goal in the 40th minute. Throughout the regular season, Portland and the Flash had played each other a number of times, and this was Portland's first win over the Flash. And they do it down a player, Sandra.
Yeah.
It gives
I
me
love
chills.
it. I love it. I'm listening to you rattling everything off, and I'm just like, yes, that was the energy. And this is like, I love that we're doing these segments moving forward, Lisa, because this is where maybe some folks are getting introduced to what we refer to as like some NWSL lore a little bit. We love like rivalries that happen organically, right? And believe it or not, sometimes they happen through playoffs. And when you think about how the playoffs look back in the day for NWSL, they were short, they were small, it's just top 4 teams, semifinal round, and then you get a championship final. But they had a couple of games in the regular season that were kind of spicy. And then you have this concept of like, okay, surely that team's going to win because they did so well, because they, they go out and they end up like, getting a shield. And this is what you want to see. You want to see 2 really good teams with 2 really good rosters go head to head. But then there was a little bit of that lore that came in. It's like some of the lore that followed in NWSL was like, if you won the shield, you were probably going to lose the championship. And like that's a theme. That's a theme that like followed and haunted teams a little bit, like in the future championships, and we'll talk about that, in future episodes. But this is kind of like where it starts. So I love, like, for those reasons, because we all love the lore. I'm happy that we're doing this as well, because we're kind of seeing some of the very early stages of those things getting introduced.
Absolutely. And even when you think about how the parity is so different now in the league, even though it's expanded with 14 teams this year and expanded playoffs going into this 2024 season, the parity is still there, right? Any team can win. The fact that 3 teams finished at the top of the standings in 2013, all tied on points, but the Thorns end up going on a 4-game win streak at the end of the season to snap Western New York Flash's 8-game unbeaten streak. The Thorns win the inaugural NWSL championship. And we did tease that we weren't going to talk about Alex Morgan anymore, but we're talking about her because she had the assist to Christine Sinclair to give the Thorns their second goal. I absolutely love this because it's fun that we get to recap what has happened in the past all the way up until the championship. So this was our Road to Kansas City segment. We started in 2013. Tune in next week. We're going to talk about the 2014 NWSL championship, recap it, and go back through everything.